Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Keller Pacific Design and Construction Issue Coordination with BIM Track webcast. My name is Chuck Keeley with Keller Pacific. I'm joined with John Barkwell, Director of Business Development from BIM Track. We'll be hosting the webinar today. Appreciate everybody's time. All the participants are in mute-only mode. We'll be unmuting at the end of the webcast to take some questions and answers. In the GoToMeeting panel, there is a chat window that if you feel like writing a comment or asking a question, we'll be tracking that throughout the webcast and answering those questions at the end. Next slide. So if you don't know who Keller Pacific is, we want to be your technology partner. We've been in business for quite a long time. We're focused on the AEC industry and provide many BIM and CAD services. We enjoy a lot of great partnerships with AEC software solutions like BIM Track. We offer consulting and training on all those applications, and we have a project team ourselves that uses these softwares on our projects. Next slide. So some of the services that we provide in all stages of design, pre-construction, and construction include what you see on the screen. One of the things that we're doing a lot is BIM coordination, which brought us to BIM Track, actually. Whether it's design, pre-construction, or during construction, one of the challenges of that role as a BIM coordinator is keeping everybody moving forward, tracking their issues, assigning tasks, and making sure that things get done on time. BIM Track actually solves those issues and helps the process move smoothly. With that, I'm going to hand it over to John Barkwell from BIM Track. He's going to show you what BIM Track can do for you.
Great. Thank you, Chuck. I appreciate it. Hi, everyone. Again, as Chuck had mentioned, my name is John Barkwell. I'm the Director of Business Development for the U.S. For the BIM Track team. I'm excited to talk with you today about the problem that we're solving in the industry. I've got an overview presentation, a couple slides that I like to use just to kind of level set and let you know kind of who we are and kind of the problem that we're solving and kind of what our approach is. But then I will do a live demonstration, a short demonstration of BIM Track in the browser. I'll show how we work with Revit directly and also in Navisworks. So a little bit about who we are. So the agenda, we're going to talk about the challenges, the actual process improvement, the value, the short demo, and then at the end we'll have a Q&A. So again, as Chuck mentioned, please type any questions that you have down the chat window, and we'll address those at the end of the presentation. So BIM Track actually started from a BIM consultancy organization called BIM One. So it actually came out of the industry and not necessarily a technology company. BIM One was doing coordination services on international projects literally all over the world. And the challenge we had was coordinating with teams that are all over the world. So the architect in London, and the MEP was in Chicago, and our structural engineer in Denver. And it was very difficult to try and keep everybody accountable for what they needed to do and really provide a project-wide transparency. And that's really the emphasis of BIM Track. And you'll hear me kind of use those words through the presentation about accountability and transparency, because that's one of the key things that BIM Track brings to the table, is that no issue or item gets dropped because everything has been kind of assigned. So that's really where we started from as the industry. When I talk about the projects, BIM Track is being literally used all over the world on projects. We're part of the Building Smart Alliance. And we subscribe to kind of the concept of open BIM. We're agnostic to the technologies that are out there, from Autodesk or Trimble or Nemetschek. Most solutions provide some type of interoperability through the IFCs, the industry foundation classes, and that allows us to, the analogy that I always use is there's a lot of tools in the toolbox that people are using, depending on if they're a structural engineer, they might be using Tekla, architects using Revit, and maybe an MEP person using AutoCAD MEP. BIM Track provides the interface to be able to work with all of those solutions. So it allows us to get broad adoption and usage and accountability on projects. So just because we have BIM doesn't necessarily mean all our problems are solved. You know, there are still issues in design and that we find in constructability models, you know, which can lead to problems with quantities and planning and execution. You know, what we usually typically see out there are, you know, issues are not necessarily just clashes, but they could be things that maybe the architect needs to raise as a design request within Revit to be able to communicate with the team. And so I'll point out that, you know, BIM Track is a cloud-based solution, so there's no installation that you need to do other than the plugins, which I'll show you to work as we call in context within the authoring environment, such as Revit, or if you're a VDC coordinator using Navisworks to be able to work inside of Navisworks and have the BIM Track application inside of Navisworks. So it's a cloud-based solution except for those plugins. So it's very easy to get teams up and running because, you know, our experience is if you've got a BIM specialist who's in Revit, you know, 10, 12 hours a day, having a tool that helps them kind of manage those issues is an easy transition for them to really accept kind of the workflow. So, you know, issues can be raised within the model and from a browser perspective, from Navisworks and Revit. I'll show you kind of that workflow, but they could be a variety of things, you know, RFIs, defects. BIM Track is authored in an HTML5 environment so that we actually don't need an app per se for our mobile applications. So if you've got an iPad or a mobile phone, you can actually launch the browser on your mobile device and log into BIM Track just like you would from your computer, because BIM Track will actually configure itself to the screen real estate of the device that you're working on. And so although we are not a field solution per se, like a lot of the point solutions out there that do field management, you can take a photograph on your phone, let's say, of a construction defect, log that into BIM Track and communicate that back to the office. The other thing I'll show you is that you can attach specifications. So like replacements and data validation, we can enrich the model, as we call it, with information that is not design specific, but the I in BIM, the information, right? So PDF files or any type of document can be enriched within the model. A little bit about the workflow that, you know, we typically see in the industry today kind of looks like this, you know, where you've got your BIM manager on the left there using tools like Navisworks or maybe Calibre and pulling together a multidisciplinary federated model and running clashes, you know, architectural against MEP or structural against MEP, and coming up with those issues. And traditionally the workflow is that, you know, the VDC coordinators will save viewpoints within Navisworks and they'll send those viewpoints off within the Navisworks file to the team to work on. And it's a very siloed approach because you're basically containing that information within that Navisworks viewpoints, and you really don't have accountability to what people are working on week over week as you do your design or constructability coordination meetings. And often what happens is there's a lot of back and forth communication between the team that is working via email and screenshots that's not necessarily linked to the actual issue or models that we're talking about. And then, you know, the modelers will, you know, open up Revit and make their changes to the model and save to central, and then email and, you know, or update the spreadsheet, and kind of the, you know, the process repeats itself weekly, you know, rinse and repeat, and they kind of go through that process. And often what happens with this workflow is that, you know, issues get dropped, things get missed, and the team's not necessarily being accountable because often they are talking about the same issues that they were talking about in the last meeting, you know. And at the end of the day, if we can get teams making decisions based on when they are assigned, due dates, so that when we come into that next coordination meeting, we're actually talking about that new phase, that new zone, projects run a lot smoother. So this traditional process is very automated and very siloed and not very automated. So what we suggest, a better workflow, is to incorporate BIM Track into it. And so it's very complementary to the workflow that you do today. I'll point out that, you know, your model management workflow, whether you're using tools like BIM 360 or Box, or you're just loading models on your FTP server, or you have some server exchange that you're using, that process stays the same because we don't require you to upload your authoring environment to BIM Track. What we do is we link, if you will, our communication and correspondence via shared coordinate system to your actual models. So the VDC coordinator using Navisworks can load his models from BIM 360, do his clash grouping, clash reporting, and update directly from within Navisworks to BIM Track in the cloud, and assign those issues to individual teams that need to fix those issues. You can also give access or grant access to owners or project managers or architects, you know, people that don't have Navisworks or Revit, or frankly couldn't navigate or open up Revit to save their life. You can actually invite them into the process using just their browser. So I'll show you kind of how that works. Now we can upload, as I mentioned, the industry foundation class models in a read-only, if you will, view, IFC, to be able to share the design intent or model design progress with extended stakeholders. But that's certainly an optional choice if you choose to do that. Normally what I see, my experience is teams will kind of weekly upload models just to kind of keep the extended team informed about the progress of how we're doing on the project. But really with BIM Track, we're providing visibility, up-to-date access to all of those issues, and keeping the team accountable. So when we go into a meeting, so for example, when you assign those issues to an end user, they get an email notification directly to their inbox, their corporate email inbox, and I'll show you this process in just a minute. But basically that assigns that to the individual with the due date that they need to work on it, so it's very clear what the expectations are. And BIM Track, here's the nice thing, BIM Track will go so far as sending them an email the day before it's due as a friendly little reminder saying, hey, you've got these 10 items that are due before the design coordination meeting tomorrow. Just a heads up, right? So BIM managers and VDC coordinators love that because it saves them the headache of kind of herding cats and having to ping the team to say, hey guys, you know, remember those items that we assigned you last week? We've really got to have them done because we're working on a new phase. You know, it just allows you to kind of focus on the big ticket items and allow those thousands and thousands of, you know, minor ticket items, if you will, that are typically involved in a project to be able to resolve by themselves with a team. So I talked a little bit about the plugins. I just want to mention, and I'll show you these in a second, the user interface of the plugins is basically you install it. It's a simple install for whatever tool that you're using. You can dock the BIM Track dialog box wherever you'd like within the application, but it's very consistent user interface, UI within it. So whether you're in Revit or Navis, you'll feel very comfortable using the BIM Track interface because it is consistent with that. And so you also have access to the web viewer as well, which I'll show you that. So just to kind of summarize what we're talking about is I'm going to jump into the BIM Track and show you the issue management 3D viewer. Metrics and reporting is huge on projects. This will blow you away. I mean, to be able to have up to the minute metrics and reports on the current progress of the project with literally a click of a button on what people are doing and what's assigned to different teams and priority and things like that. It's super powerful. So let's do that. Let's jump over into the demo. So I'm just going to Alt-Tab over to my Windows environment. You should see my browser now. I'm using Chrome as my browser of choice. You can use whatever you'd like, whether you're on a Mac or a PC. But this is what BIM Track looks like when you log in and set up a project. You'll see that we use this concept of a hub. So a project hub can have unlimited projects within that hub. So here you can see there are 11 projects that I've been assigned to have access and working on. There may be 20 projects on this hub, but me as kind of a project admin, I only have access to these 11. Okay, over here on the left-hand side where it says download add-ins, let me point that out. So this is where you'll have access to all of your plugins. So if you want to install the Navisworks and Revit plugin, it's actually a very simple installation, which it installs for Navis and Revit at the same time. Any versions or flavors, and it's pretty easy to do that. So let's go jump into a project, and I'll give you a quick little introduction. I'm going to start with the browser first. I'm going to jump into Navisworks. I'm going to go to Revit, kind of playing the role as the architect that's receiving those issues, and then we'll jump back to the browser and kind of wrap up with the viewer and metrics. So when you click on a project, the first thing you see is this activity dashboard, which is showing you basically just kind of a timeline of what's going on with the project. So here you can see last week I was working on some joist issues from Navisworks and some skin on the architectural model, some MEP, and Christian was doing some work. So it's pretty cool because it gives you just an activity timeline of what people are working on, and it's interactive. So I can click on any one of these items, so you can see here 1854, and navigate directly to that issue that Christian was working on. Okay, over here in the top, the number of issues that are due that I need to work on. So I've got 5 that are already overdue, and then project-related issues, right, that are on time and overdue. So you can see here, it gives you like a little health check monitor to be able to track how you're doing against your project. Obviously, this red tells us that we're having some issues with this project. And then user activity. Again, all of these graphs and charts, these widgets, if you will, are interactive. So you can drill in to find more information about the users. This is basically kind of on a day-to-day timeline of how we're tracking across the project. Okay, so that's the dashboard. Let's over here on the left-hand side of the browser, you'll see your project menu. So I'm going to jump into issues next. And right now you'll see the issues page, right? And so as I mentioned, issues can come from a variety of sources. They can come from here. You can see it looks like this is from Navisworks, maybe a clash detection report with joist 700. Stair width, that looks like that one was created maybe from within Revit. The architect had a question that maybe he needed to query one of his colleagues or for somebody from another team. And over here, maybe an AutoCAD file, so a 2D kind of plan markup. So it doesn't have to be 3D. It can be 2D images, 3D images. It can actually be photographs, as I mentioned before, on a job site. They can come from a variety of sources. Now, when you look at these cards, as I kind of call them within BIM Track, they're color-coded, in this case, based on priority. So you can see all the reds are critical, all the yellows are high, and so on. That's a project setting that you can configure. So maybe I want, instead of the priority to be color-coded, maybe the discipline. I want all the architectural to be red and all the structural to be yellow. Completely up to you. It's just a visual aid to help you very quickly identify what you're working on. And priority is a pretty typical one, because that way we see anything red, we need to focus on that. Now let's choose filters, because you can see right now I've got a number of 247 issues out of over 1,600 that have been closed out on the project. So right now we're looking at all 247. But if I click on filters right here, what I can do is I can filter specific issues. So I want to say, show me all the critical and show me all the high issues. Maybe I want to look at a certain phase of the project, or maybe from a specific author, or maybe a due date. Let's focus all the ones that are due by the end of this month in August, so that we know we have let's say a deadline or deliverable coming up. Let's get the big ticket items out of the way, so we could do that. And certainly things like labels or zones of the project. Everything that you're looking at in this filters dialog box is configurable. So you've got a hospital project versus a airport project. Your issues, grouping, and zones and phases are going to be completely different, right? And so you can set those up, and I'll point this out just from here. You have project templates over here on the left-hand side. So as you create your project settings and you define what type of project that you're working on, what our customers will do is they'll save that, kind of like a save as in just a Word document or Excel spreadsheet, save that as to the project template. So that way you can spin up projects literally with a click of a button and have it configured specifically to the type of project that you're working on, okay? So if I choose apply right now with critical and high, you'll notice it goes from 247 down to the 97. So here are all the critical and high issues, all the red and yellow cards, if you will, that is active on this project that different people are working on, right? So it gives us project-wide transparency and accountability for everything that the team is working on. Now, if I go back to next to the filtering and choose quick filters, you can actually save these. So look what happens when I click on that. Over here on the right, I get a list of that I can actually name this top issues, right? And save that as my default. So each day when I log in, I want to look at all the top issues, right? As I get closer to the end of this month because of this deliverable that's coming up, I want to focus on that. Or maybe I want to share these with the team, right? So what BIM managers will do is they will set up a whole list of shared search sets, if you will, of the project, usually discipline or level or phases, things like that, that you can share with the team. So all they have to do is click on one. So for example, right here, top MEP issues, this is one that I did before. If I just click on it, watch what happens. It basically just fills out the fields, critical, high, with a label of mechanical. And these are all the critical and high mechanical related issues, if you will, that are on this project. And if I click on one right here, this HVAC and BIM, this one that was generated from Tekla and brought in, you can see there's markups that were done. You can see the comments that are happening on the project. It looks like Christian made some comments and he updated some communication with Kevin. So what's nice about this is all of our chatter or communication is actually linked to the actual issue, which is synced to the model. And I'll show you that when we get into Navisworks and Revit. You also can do attachments, as I mentioned before. So you can click the Browse button and literally attach anything on your computer or server to an issue. So specifications or other items that you want to kind of enrich that. So, think about opportunities here with operations and maintenance and O&M, right? We're enriching the model so that we can then export this out to maybe a COBE compliant export to be consumed into Maximo for a handover to an owner. So, this is kind of the final step of BIM because we have model information there. Now we can enrich that model for that 30, 40 years that asset is going to be in existence. And typically, as most of us know, where most of the cost is incurred. But so also we have a history log. So here is literally a time and date stamp, a non-delete framework of everything that people have said on a project and what they're going to do. So if and when there is finger pointing on a project, usually when, you can come back to this history log and see exactly who did what. Did someone actually even look at an issue when you ask them to do in time and date stamp, right? So this is a great tool to be able to really, again, keep the team accountable for issues that they're working on. Now, issues can have multiple views. If I click this arrow here, you can see one was brought in from Navisworks, maybe one from Tekla, because a lot of times a issue view, one particular angle doesn't really do it justice. You might have one that's, in this case, zoomed in a little bit closer to that cable tray system, with the ductwork that's intersecting that steel. So you can add, and I'll show you how to do that inside of Navisworks and Revit as well, to be able to communicate better with the team what they need to work on. Okay, that's enough with issues. So let's talk about how these issues are created and where they're created. The typical workflow that we see is using tools like Navisworks. And so here, again, you can load the models with BIM 360 or however you'd like. I've just pulled this from my local drive, and I've installed the BIM Track plugin inside of Navisworks. And my personal preference is over here to dock it on the right side of the screen so I can see all of the issues. If you've got a dual monitor system, you can expand this out so that you can interface with it. But the idea, these are all the issues that we were just looking at literally live in the browser, now showing directly inside of Navisworks. So take a look at this. I've loaded the model and I've chosen the BIM Track Hub and I've chosen the project that I'm on. That's how BIM Track knows to retrieve those particular issues that are assigned to this project. And if I click on filters right here, take a look at this. That same type of interface, if you will, that I was showing you in the browser of filters based on priority, critical, and high, or remember I was showing you the quick filters? Look at that. If I had created a quick filter, it would immediately be available now inside of Navisworks. So if I say top MEP issues and hit apply, check this out. It'll filter down to those 18 issues that I was just looking at in the browser. And the same thing here, that HVAC, that Tekla item that we were looking at, here it's available now inside of Navisworks. And if I click on view and model, it navigates me directly to that location. Using the shared coordinate system, it now navigates me to that location of where that issue is, and I can see the markup that the team did of where that issue needs to be resolved. So Navisworks allows you to kind of pull these models together. The typical workflow that we see is people are using Navisworks to run validation and clash detection reports, right? And so let me go back over here to the home button and I'll click on clash detection. And I've gone ahead and I've got a couple reports that are very common, things like architectural walls against structural. I've run a report and it's telling me there are 256 total clashes in this project, okay? And over here you can see that typically you group them together. So if you're using tools, clash grouping tools like iConstruct, or we have one called Clash Grouper here that allows you to group those items together. It's a free plugin, if you will, that runs inside of Navis that comes with BIM Track. Basically, you can group items together based on levels and discipline. And I've got this joist right here that's got 3 clashes basically. Clash 1, Clash 2, and Clash 401. Is related to that joist 700 item. And so the workflow is typically this, is that you'll go through and you'll group your clashes together. You'll flag the items reviewed that you want to pull into BIM Track. And so over here, if we go inside the BIM Track dialog box, clashes to issues, if I click on that, it pulls up a dialog box from BIM Track inside of Navisworks. And I can say that test result, architectural walls versus structure that I ran, I want to grab some properties inside of that so we can actually suck the value properties, things like clash grouping and grid locations, distance, and description from the clash report inside of BIM Track. And so the workflow is you select the grouping that you want, the clash properties, and the clash status here, I say reviewed, because I don't want to pull in the active ones that would grab all these other items. I just want to pull in the reviewed ones. And I'm going to assign those here to anybody on the project, right? And so I'll talk about project access and all of that in just a little bit, but all the users have access here. So I'm going to assign this to myself, so I'm not bombarding anybody else in the team. And then you can specify things like a priority. What's the priority of this? It's medium. What's the zone? It's related to level 2. You can do things like team access. So maybe you only want certain teams to have access to this particular issues. So it allows you to set kind of permission level access to issues. And then notify. Here I can notify Christian and I can notify the architectural team. Okay, think of this as like a CC in an email. So I'm assigning these issues to John, but I want to notify Christian, and I also want to notify everybody that's on the architectural team. Maybe there's 10 individuals, so I don't have to choose each 10 individuals, I should say. I can just choose architect, and it will do that for me. It basically will send them a notification saying, hey, John's working on this item. He has the ball, if you will. Just wanted to let you know. It may be something that is relevant to them that we want to inform them. And then things like type, is this a clash? Is it a comment, an RFI, right? Again, project configurable options that you can configure for your project. This is clash related. I'm going to mark this as open and then a due date, and then I can also turn on this checkbox for view state. So those of you that are Navisworks experts, you know how you can set up different clipping planes and colorization, colorizing all your MEP or your systems for coordination. You can actually pull those properties into BIM Track, which is awesome. To be able to see that literally in the browser, or to communicate that colorization and clipping back to Revit or any of the authoring tools. So basically, I've gone ahead and I've actually published this report, so I can't hit publish here. It's already in the list here. But if I hit publish, I'm going to get a email notification to my bimtrack.co email address that these items have been assigned with a clear due date of when these need to be done. Let's say at the 24th, and then that way I can kind of track that. And so that's how the items are published here. And so, for example, if we go over to this pipe problem one, you'll see that, and if I click on view and model and turn off the clash detection here, you can see that there's that pipe problem. Issues can be multiple views, right? And so if I go to view 2 of 5 right here, you can see this is a different angle looking at a different perspective of this. And if I click on view and model, it takes me directly there, in this case, the author environment. So you can have multiple views related to one particular issue in one card, if you will, inside of BIM Track. The classic example, like I always think of, is the cable tray, right? You run a clash detection report inside of Navisworks, and that cable tray may pick up like 30 plus clashes within that one room of that cable tray. But you know, and I know that that's really one clash, because if we move the cable tray down like a ½ an inch, let's say, it may resolve all of those clashes. So we don't want to have 30 of these cards over here inside of BIM Track. We want to have one. So one of 30 items can be consolidated into one card to allow us to manage that in a much more effective process. Okay. The other thing you can also do within BIM Track inside of Navisworks is views to issues, right? So if I click on views to issues, a very common workflow for VDC coordinator is to create viewpoints from clashes, or doing a visual walkthrough, visual validation of issues in their models. And they'll create those viewpoints and basically communicate those viewpoints off the team. And as I mentioned, that's a very siloed approach. So we provide a mechanism here, if you will, to allow you to convert those viewpoints to now issues, push them to the cloud so that we can assign them to the individuals and with due dates. And you'll notice these fields right here we call this a sticky dialog box, meaning that when you use BIM Track and you go through the first time, it will remember what you did last, because a lot of times you're going to assign them to similar individuals or similar circumstances. And so it's all about minimizing clicks. When you're doing coordinations of thousands of these items, it's super helpful to not have to choose these fields all over again each time you come back into the dialog box. So kind of as designed, we make it sticky so that maybe all I needed to do is change this to Dave, and I want to have these same properties and publish that off into BIM Track. So again, so just to kind of summarize within Navisworks, whatever tool you're using to aggregate your models together from different sources, BIM Track runs as kind of transparent on top of Navisworks to allow you to consume those clashes and viewpoints and push them to BIM Track for assignment. So let's go play the role of the architect, that now as the coordinator, I've assigned these issues to the architect or the MEP person and say Revit MEP to be able to work on those. So I'm going to go over to Revit. And again, however you load your model, C4R, box, or whatever it might be, that process stays the same. BIM Track runs as transparent on top of the process. So over here, I've loaded this model just locally, and I've got some linked elements to it, different models that I've linked in. And I've got the BIM Track dialog box, just like I had inside of Navisworks, docked over on the right side of the screen. Those same filtering options that we were looking at before. Take a look at this. Top MEP issues, hit apply, you have immediately available inside of Revit, okay? And so if I'm looking for one like this pipe problem that we were looking at earlier, I click on view and model, and check this out. it knows to navigate me directly to that location, and it remembers the clipping planes that we had set up inside of Navisworks to be able to view that and make the change where that structural beam and those elements are colliding. So the workflow is this, is that playing the designer now, I can make changes to the authoring environment, the actual model, save to central, and then what I'll do is I'll come over here to view and edit, and I will make my notes that I've made the change to the model, right? So you can see here, this is the issue, and it's all track 1639, the comments that I've made, and you can see here, I can grab a screenshot of the change that I've made. So a very good workflow that our customers will do is they'll say to their design team or consultants, they'll say, hey guys, when you make a change or a correction to your model of that error that we need to fix, what I want you to do is use the snipping tool right here inside of BIM Track, the screen capturing tool, grab that and post it to the comments so that when I run a report inside of BIM Track, I can see very quickly the change that you made without having to load the models. This is huge time saver. When a coordinator's got to go through and review thousands of items and he has to load those models and navigate and do a actual check to see exactly what was done, it's very, very time consuming. Now we can literally, within a BIM Track, what we would do is you can see here, it says this status is in progress. It means that I'm now working on it. When I'm done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to log it as resolved. Because you'll notice here, I'm playing the role as the architect or the MEP person. I don't have closed as a status option here, right? We've set that up as design because the VDC coordinator or BIM manager is the only one who has access to the closed status on issues. So I'll choose resolve right here. And when I publish that, my coordinator will pull a report, and I'll show you this inside of that filtering that we're in the browser. He will say, show me a report of all the resolved items that were done today or this week, and it will give them that list of that items, and they'll go through and they'll do a validation, kind of that quality control step, to see that that change was actually done correctly, because if not, they'll flick it back to open with some notes here in the comment field of all that chatter that's been going on, saying, hey, you know what? You didn't fix it. I need you to do this. I need you to move the column, another direction, something like that. So again, transparency, accountability. Nothing falls between the cracks with this process, okay? So let's go jump back over to BIM Track, and there's inside the browser. I want to show you a couple things related to the viewer. As I mentioned before, you don't need to upload models, your authoring environment, but you can publish models here to BIM Track. And you can see you can set up discipline-related folders, if you will, just kind of what you might do on a local drive of those models. So the architect may be publishing models from LA, from Revit, the MEP engineer publishing models from AutoCAD MEP to that are in Chicago. They can all have access from different locations, publishing these models to this repository as a read-only, just kind of a design progress report, if you will, of how things are working. You get these little tool tips, by the way, that will pop up, giving you a little when new features come out and things like that we're working on. Let me go ahead and close that down. So these are the models, and you can actually have saved views, just like you do within Revit and Navisworks kind of viewpoints, and you can import those into BIM Track. I'm going to go ahead and load the architectural and structural models here. And while I'm doing that real quick, and one thing I wanted to point out that I missed, inside of Revit, for example, is you can publish your models, and not only your models, but also your 2D sheets from within Revit. Not only that, you can schedule those to be published at midnight. This is huge. This is a new feature that just recently came out based on customer request or demand, is that, hey, you know what, it'd be great if BIM Track could open up my models, publish my 3D models, and all of my sheet floor plans that I have from within Revit to BIM Track. And it's part of a new feature we call hyper modeling, and I'll show you that in just a second, where we can combine the 2D sheets with the actual 3D models. It's really cool. It's kind of the best of both worlds. But you can publish the models literally at midnight on Thursday. It will, as long as your system's on and Revit's loaded, it will load up the models, publish them. and that way the team can connect when you come in Friday morning. You've got all your models and sheets loaded inside of the viewer. But this is the viewer. We're actually able to load models of 700 megabytes to 1.2 gig inside the browser. It's super fast rendering speeds. But the other thing is you can also show those issues. So click here. If I click on issues right now, take a look at this. I can say I'm looking at all of those. Remember before we said top MEP issues? Those are all those MEP issues. And if I orbit the model around, you can see over here that Joyce 700, that new group, those are those spheres. So we can actually pull in clash location spheres from Navisworks and share those in the browser, but also inside of Revit to help you identify what you're working on. Okay, you can also hover over any one of these. So here, if I click on misalignment, it will zoom me directly into that location where that issue is at inside the browser, right? And now I can kind of orbit around, zoom back out a little bit, and see exactly what I need to kind of work on. Okay, so it allows you to do some very Navisworks light type functionality. You can look and pan. You've got some measurement tools where you can check distances and angles of your models. So, you know, a lot of our customers are starting to kind of maybe use BIM Track Viewer for their coordination capabilities instead of just relying on Navisworks. The other thing I want to point out real quickly is within the sheets. This is the new thing that's just coming out, telling you it's got a little update here, information about it. But this is what we call a hypermodeling, which is huge. So these are all the sheets, the 2D sheets that are published from Revit related to this model. And if I kind of minimize the window here, you can see here's the title block that was brought in. So that's the 2D title block, but that's the 3D model. And if I use my orbit command that I'm on right now, just to kind of kick the model up at kind of an angle right here, let me kind of use my wheel to kind of zoom in. Take a look at this. This is huge. This is a fantastic tool to use in your design or constructability coordination meetings because you get information from 2D documents that you don't natively get in 3D models, like dimensions and section marks and room numbers, things like that, that really can help you communicate to your consultants what they need to work on, what the problem is with the current design. Right? And so if I kind of orbit this around, it just allows you, and the interesting thing here is that we pull in the level properties from Revit with that 2D sheet, and it slices it through the model. So this did it automatically. When I bring in those 2D sheets, it knows where to clip the model based on the elevation value coming from Revit. And so it's a fantastic way to very quickly, and it kind of shows you that transparency view. Okay, the other kind of last thing I want to wrap up here is on the metrics. I think this is probably one of the biggest things, the values that really sets BIM Track aside from any solution that's out there. You know, there's a number of kind of coordination tools that are kind of out on the market, but I'm telling you, there's nothing that gives you the level of transparency like this. The average close time on issues. This is a demo project, so not a very healthy project. If I was a BIM manager, I would probably not be a BIM manager very long because this is but it's real data. So it's a great way to really check the health, if you will, of your project. Average close time of issues and total number of issues. And take a look at this. Everybody that's on the team on this project color-coded. And this pie chart is interactive. I can drill into Eric's items, these 95 items, literally, and see exactly what he's working on. I can look at the total number of closed issues from the life of the project from a weekly standpoint, or let's say a monthly, and take a look at this. This is a great kind of barometer of from the beginning of this project over month to month, how many issues were created, how many issues were closed out. So as these lines get further apart, that's bad. As they get closer together, that's good. It's a very quick visual indicator. If you've got a project milestone coming up, you want these lines to be tight as possible because it's giving you a little indicator of what the team has been working on. So as I mentioned, this thing's interactive. It's showing me the assign to, but take a look at this. Because when you create issues, you assign metadata. You know, is it a clash? Is it a comment? What's the priority? Remember all those things I was showing you in the filter? So I can say, let's look at the teams. Okay, let's see how many issues are assigned to a team. We've got the architectural team, contractor, design, MEP, and a bunch that are on not set. That's telling me that maybe those were imported from Navisworks and they weren't particularly assigned to a team just yet. So that is a great indicator telling me that I need to work on that and get those resolved if I'm the BIM manager. But maybe what about you know, phase of the project, right? How are we tracking right now? It looks like most of our activity is happening in the design phase. We have some items in the construction phase, or maybe priority, right? If I've got that deadline coming up, I want to get the big ticket items, which is these critical items, out of the way first and kind of work my way through this list. So let's go investigate what's going on with these 49 critical issues. And if I drill into that, I see the culprit right here. My good buddy Eric right here has the biggest piece of the pie, if you will, of issues that are assigned to him. So it tells me right away, something's going on with Eric's world. He's either been out sick or he's on vacation. Something's wrong. What I can do is a multi-edit and select half of Eric's items that are assigned to him and maybe assign those over here to Alan, because Alan's only got one item. So he's got a little bandwidth. Maybe he can help Eric out. So me as the BIM manager, it gives me that transparency before, you know, Friday's coordination meeting to mitigate that risk, those issues getting done on time, so that when we get into that meeting, we're talking about a whole new phase. So BIM managers love this because it allows them to be able to report on this literally out of a click of a button. It is immediately updated. So if somebody's working in Revit and the next time I hit the update button, this thing is going to change live. The other thing that you can do is that you can print this out. So if I hit the print button right here of these critical items, it'll take me to the reports section automatically with the automatically fills in the fields of priority. But you can also, just like we had inside of the filters, we can choose, you know, top MEP issues that we want to filter on. So if I click on that, and then here I can actually do a template. So if I click on template, just like on filters, you can have coordination meeting reports. So maybe you've got one for the architectural team that you need to do week over week, every week. Set that up as a saved report, okay? And not only that, you can schedule that report. So this is a new feature that just came out with BIM Track. So I can actually pull a template report that I want to call from, say, architectural report, and I want to do it, you know, weekly, every Monday at a certain time, 9:48 a.m., and I want it to automatically email me and my project BIM consulting team that report, okay, and schedule that. So that happens automatically week over week. You get an updated report of this as an intelligent PDF report. And let me show you what it looks like if I click on the print button right here of those top MEP issues we're working on, those critical items. It basically will create this report, time and date stamps it. It's looking for my printer right here, so let me cancel that. So here's the project, this demo project that we're on. It time and date stamps it with my name here at 9:49 a.m. Pacific time. Project logos can be all configured. Those top 18 issues, right, with all the charts and graphs. This is an interactive PDF report. So you get all of these charts that you'd want. Again, completely configurable. If you don't want some of these, it's completely up to you. But if I scroll down here, you can see there's that misalignment, that one that we were looking at inside of Revit. If I scroll down through the list here, you can see all the comments that the team has been making. Here's that pipe problem. Remember that one we were looking at? And take a look at this. When I hover over that link right there for that pipe problem, look down here in the lower left-hand corner of the window. It'll show you that link. Every single issue has a unique link to them, right? And so if you set this PDF file off to anybody on a project, they can literally just click on the PDF report and click on this link, and it will open them up in the browser, navigate them directly to this 3D view inside the browser. All the comments are tracked, all the reporting. This is a huge, huge time saver for BIM managers, literally for a click of a button or have an automatic report that took hours before to kind of consolidate all this information and have it accurate and reportable, and then upload it to Procore or Aconex or any of your project management solutions as a project record that this is the progress of the project. Okay. So that's a general overview. We're getting kind of close here, and I know we've got some questions that have been coming in from the participants. So let me go ahead and pause the presentation on my side here for a second and go back to the PowerPoint. And what we'll do is I'll hand it over to Chuck, and he can kind of open up the lines or go over some questions that maybe he's received on his end.
Yeah, John, great. Actually, I've got 3 questions. First one makes a lot of sense. What does it cost?
that's always the question. Before, right? All right. Yeah. All right. Let me do this. Let me. The best thing for me to do is to flip over. Let's see here. I've got. If you go to bimtrack.co and click on pricing, all the information on pricing is transparent. It's available. It's super inexpensive. We've tried to take price out of the equation because we just want to get it into as many hands as possible. So it's a no-brainer, as most people will see here. Take a look at this. $6.95 per month per user for a 100 user plan. Okay, so if you've got 100 users, it would be $6.95, which basically comes out to $695 per month for all of these users. But keep in mind, that's unlimited projects and issues. It's not just for a specific project. So a lot of times you've got teams working on multiple projects. You can then basically dilute the cost of BIM Track not only against one project but against multiple projects. And a follow-up kind of to that question that I often hear is, what's considered an active users? Do I have to buy it for everybody on the team? And the answer is, if you want them to be part of the project, accountable, assigning issues, reviewing issues, then yes, they need to be an active user of BIM Track. So a lot of our GC customers are actually buying licenses for their subs and consultants, assigning that, and they are the hub admin, if you will, so they can assign and retrieve licenses. So if they have one consultant that's no longer on that project, they will pull those licenses and assign it to others. We also have kind of an enterprise model. We can talk about, you can talk with Chuck or anybody on the sales team, and we can give you more information on kind of how that works. But that's kind of an unlimited model of unlimited users, and you basically only pay for what you use. So if you've only got, 150 users active a month, you can actually just pay for that specific plan. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yes. Next question relates to what we do here at Keller Pacific. We're an Autodesk dealer. We do coordination, and we use BIM 360 Glue for our projects. So the question is, how does BIM Track compare to Autodesk BIM 360 Design and Glue?
Yeah, that's a good one. We hear that one a lot. It's there's certainly a little bit of overlap on Glue because it has some correspondence functionality. I mean, there's always, even the Autodesk solutions have overlaps between a lot of their functionality of what they do. But the big difference is this: is that with BIM Track, we provide, they're not just with Glue. It's related to to clashes. Typically Glue is helping you manage clashes between multiple disciplines. And as I showed in that one slide in the presentation, they're not just clashes. Sometimes they're just a design query the architect's trying to raise with a consultant. In that case, you wouldn't use Glue to do that. They're going to use an email, right? And so instead of doing that, use BIM Track to manage all of your communication, because you get that reporting capability that you would not get with Glue, right? And so what a really good workflow that a lot of our customers are doing is they're actually using BIM 360 for their model management, but they're using BIM Track for their correspondence management. That's kind of the big difference between, using something like Glue and BIM Track is they're using, there's much more value and I think feature functionalities, within BIM Track that you'll find within Glue. And we can have, if you've got any more questions related to that, we can talk offline or do a follow-up with you if you've got some questions workflow related.
Great. Yeah, that's how actually we got involved with BIM Track. We were a subcontractor on a BIM project where the GC was using a BIM 360 Glue to manage the model, and they were using BIM Track, and we loved it. That's why we gave you guys a call. So next question is, does BIM Track have a free trial? How can people get involved?
Yeah, that's a go. So we make it pretty simple. Let me again pop back over to the browser, because if you go to bimtrack.co, what you'll want to do is click on Getting Started right here, and you can actually sign up for a free trial and use BIM Track. The free trial with BIM Track is an unlimited trial, meaning there's no time limit. So a lot of times with Autodesk you get like a 30-day trial, and so your project comes up and you're like, crap, I've got like a day left and I really didn't get to test this thing out. Ours is unlimited. We know that you're busy and you've got a lot of things going on, so we actually make our trial unlimited. The only limitation, it's the full functioning version of the software within BIM Track. And I can hear all the thoughts right now. You're wondering, what's the trick here, right? It's actually the only limitation with the trial is 50 issues. So you don't have unlimited issues with the trial. So that's the big difference. So with 50 issues, you can have multiple projects. You can invite multiple colleagues and teams to the project to kind of test out the workflow. And it's a great way to kind of kick the tires on BIM Track to see if it's going to work for you. So I encourage you to kind of do that. Just go get signed up. It's completely free. The thing I'll point out, with BIM Track, this is a software as a service, so everything is all inclusive. Unlike where you might have to buy licenses with some software and then training, subscription, and all that, it's all inclusive. So part of the implementation and technical support all comes with that. There's no additional charge to get you set up and running.
If somebody does set up a project, they have some questions, how do you guys help them out?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll point out right here inside the browser, if you're logged into BIM Track or even on our website, you'll notice this little blue icon in the bottom right corner of your browser. If you click on that, that will give you access to actually chat. This is our technical support team, and they're always on call to answer any questions, technical or even sales. They can flick you over to the sales team if you've got any pricing kind of questions. But it's a great way to kind of communicate with our technical team on questions that kind of come up. There's also a support email as well to get tickets or technical questions ticketed and logged into the system. Okay.
Excellent.
Okay. Any other questions, Chuck, or is that pretty much it?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to go to the next slide here and allow you to kind of summarize and kind of wrap up and next steps.
Thanks, John. Awesome job. Awesome solution. We see a lot of value in it. If you do too, give us a call. Email us at askkeller@kellerpacific.com or call us and talk to one of our account managers at 800-578-2457. Appreciate your time. Have a great day.
Great. Thanks, everyone.